Quick interjection before I start, guys. I just wanted to say that I know I haven't uploaded in, I think, 6 months, which is a ridiculously long time, but when I started this channel, I tried to get views, which kind of worked for a while, and now it's just kind of a hobby channel, so I hope you guys are okay with that, and I'll upload whenever I either get the chance or, you know, if I come up with a really good video idea, like this one hopefully will be. Thank you for watching. Alright, I get it. I can literally hear what you're saying through the screen. Oh my god, guys, no way! The newest addition to the 10,000 fucking YouTubers have switched to Linux! I get it, I do. And yes, I am one of them, but I will not be spending this entire video glazing the schlong of Linux. Debian and Arch, specifically in my case. I will actually try my best to outline why Linux may or may not be the best option for you. Now, before I start, I need to address the other major elephant in the room. I can literally feel the hardcore Linux fanboys imprinting boiling hot steam into their keyboards in the comments, saying stuff like, "How dare this plebeian besmirch the good name of GNU Linux?" And I get it. And I'm not denying it's good. I've been using Linux for over 2 years now, through Ubuntu, then Mint, and now Debian and Arch, and I've had a whale of a time. But Linux has its flaws, and for the regular consumer, it's not viable yet, not even close, despite what most people are saying. In fact, since its peak about a year ago, the Linux market share has gone down by almost 2%. There are 4 main things I'll be talking about in this video. I'll be telling you the tale of how I discovered and started using Linux, how it has worked for me up until now, and why that might affect my opinion. I'll be giving you the usual positives and negatives, and finally I'll be saying what you should and should not do if you switch to Linux. Flashback to about July 2021. I'd just finished gawking at the newest MatKC video about installing Windows ME on an iMac. Legendary video, by the way, you should check it out. And I got this wave of inspiration to delve into tech. At the time I had a pretty shitty Lenovo PC, which started getting me into tech anyway, but after MatKC, Michael MJD, Sebastian Lake and JDH, I was all in. I installed VirtualBox and began figuring out and delving into old versions of Windows. Through some videos on YouTube, I managed to get them working, and I had somewhat of an idea of how they worked. You may be saying, Jimmy, what's the deal with Windows? Are most of the Linux community against it? Yes, they are. The crucial difference here is that I was learning the ropes of tech, and Windows, and the Windows 10 on my computer, was by far the most fun, stable and clean way of doing so. Sure, some people complained about Windows 10, a lot of people actually, but I liked it quite a bit. I learned how to code in Python and, for some reason, the basics of assembly, along with virtual machines and the hardware level of computers. It was really easy to learn on a system like that, and it gave you everything you needed without much hassle. Then came the big 11. Oh boy. Now, Windows 11 on release was not actually too bad. Yeah, there were ads and everything, but it was mostly the same as Windows 10 with some reconfiguring. Over time, I've heard a wave of people complaining about the bloatware and shitty additions to Windows 11, with fair reasons, obviously. I didn't care all too much, but I was starting to have some doubt. I needed Windows 11 for most of my daily things, and I was not going to part with it anytime soon. During this transition phase, I had actually heard about Linux. In actuality, I literally thought and envisioned it as Ubuntu, because that is the only distribution I'd heard about, without knowing what distro meant. I just thought, Ubuntu is Linux, subconsciously. It was late 2023, I believe, after some testing on a virtual machine, I was trying, without any luck, to install Windows 7 on my computer, because I actually enjoyed using it on a VM. Since I failed so much and had basically used all versions of Windows under the sun, I thought I should give Ubuntu a try. I tested it on a virtual machine and it was actually quite nice and sleek. I eventually installed Ubuntu on my HDD to dual boot with Windows 11. And to be honest, I never really used it, because the Wi-Fi and sound never worked no matter how hard I tried. Since I was very new and comparatively young, I had no idea nor inclination of how to solve it, so I let it sit on the HDD for about a year. In the middle of 2024, after some inspiration, I decided to learn how the Linux terminal worked, and after the great NVIDIA driver fiasco of 2024, I got the Ubuntu variant to work pretty nicely. I ended up really enjoying the customizations of KDE on Ubuntu, and KDE still remains my desktop environment of choice to this day. At the time, I still used Windows 11 because of its compatibility and familiarity. I then tried Mint with Windows for about 2 months before, of course, fucking Nvidia driver problems, which made me reinstall Ubuntu again. Eventually, I stopped using Ubuntu because of... This brought me to a crossroads. Do a full switch, do a full switch. No, keep double-booting, this is fine for you. Eventually, I decided. The one thing that made me switch from Windows to Linux fully was free and open source software, or FOSS for short. Up until this point, I had rarely used FOSS because I was actually unaware of the concept. I just thought most proprietary software cost money. And at the time, most of the proprietary software on my computer was for Windows use only and cost money. Upon my discovery of the glorious FOSS ecosystem, however, that was it. It is time to defenestrate Windows. That was a switch that flipped that made me fully wipe Windows off of my computer and switch to Linux. After a week of deliberation, I chose to install Debian in mid-2025 for its reputation for being stable and rock solid, and I still use Debian to this day. Ubuntu started rotting and broke on my other drive because, you guessed it, not Nvidia driver problems this time actually, just Ubuntu being a piece of shit, in which I installed Anduin OS instead. For about a year I used Debian and Anduin before I installed Arch on my laptop, and then eventually 2 weeks ago I got rid of Anduin and installed Arch on my computer. This made me a sole Linux user. Apart from school because... regulations. Jimmy, one slight, minor, teensy tiny question. What was the point of that shitty novel opening about your Linux adventure? Well, that entire block of text you get from your angry ex was meant to convey one thing. I am a techie person. I love computers and I love fucking with their systems to do cool shit. Heck, whilst writing this script, I rewrote parts of my bash configuration file on my laptop to make my command line have personally programmed shortcuts. I would be part of a significantly sized demographic of Linux users who love doing the same things that I do with my system. After all, Linux is quite technical to the uninitiated. I love this style of operating system, which may be completely different to an operating system that just works. And let me tell you, Linux OSs rarely just work. What type of person are you? Specifically when it comes to sitting down and using your computer. Are you a programmer? What type? The nerdy modification and optimization loving one, the 9-to-5 one, or the hobbyist? Are you using your computer for schoolwork only? What apps do you run for school? Are you a gamer? What type? The one who loves trying every game that they can find, a multiplayer-centric gamer or a single-player-centric gamer? Are you the person who just answers emails and writes documents? The person who hates the bloatware AI and spyware in Windows, or do you just not care? Now I can see that you might be a tiny little bit flashbanged by all of those rhetorical questions, but I'm serious. I want any Windows, Linux or Mac user to ponder this to themselves. Are they perfectly content, curious or outright wanting to switch to a different OS? Well, you should ask yourselves these questions. Some of you in the comments are probably saying, Linux can do most of these things already. Well yes, in fact it can, but some people don't care about switching. Most people in fact don't care about switching. They are either provided everything already by their OS or they have to use Windows or Mac OS for work-related reasons. Also, if you were to switch to Linux, these questions would still remain in consideration. Just to clear up some confusion, Linux is not an operating system. It is a kernel. I'm not going to explain what a kernel is, but I will say this has facilitated many different types and flavours of Linux OSs to come from the kernel, and they are officially called Linux distributions, or distros for short. Some distros are built to be really good at performing specific uses, niche or not. Some are built to be stable regardless of what it is doing, and some are built to be hyper adaptable but with a significant amount of effort. These considerations form a decently long list of pros and cons with sticking or choosing a new OS. every time there's a pro or con, there will always be branches to it. For example, here's a branch. Adobe Creative Cloud does not work on Linux, which for many is a deal breaker. But you can pirate it. And then with a lot of work, get it to run on Wine. Are most people willing to do that? To try to simplify, here are some of the pros and cons associated with Linux. Number 1. Linux is completely free. Yes, many of you know that, but for those who don't, Linux does not cost a single dime. The only money spent is when you buy a computer, if you don't have one already. This is heavily related to the previously mentioned FOSS ecosystem. Now, I'm aware that FOSS programs can run on Windows, but this network is essentially built into the package managers of Linux to be right at your fingertips. Also, many FOSS programs have the Linux first then other strategy, which means that you might get updates and better features quicker than if you were on Windows or Mac. Number 2. There is so much choice. The Linux ecosystem has an OS for every type of person. Much like my list of questions, every question that you ask about your computer usage can be formed into a tree that will lead you to an OS tailored for your needs. Do you want a basic low-maintenance OS that just works where you never have to touch the terminal? Go for Linux Mint. Are you a developer that would like a highly customizable OS? Go for Arch or Amarchi. Do you want a rock-solid OS that will do whatever you need it to do? Go for Debian. There is really an option for everyone. Number 3. Surprisingly, gaming. Yes, there's been a myriad of jokes about gaming being absolute dog shit on Linux. However, due to the Proton compatibility layer developed by Valve, those problems have basically disappeared from most games. You can run almost any single player game there is. You can run most multiplayer games and you never have to tinker with your system if you don't want to. The only major problem with Linux gaming is that games like League of Legends, Valorant and Fortnite do not work, as they have very intricate anti-cheat systems that run down to the kernel level. This basically means that they bypass the Proton compatibility layer and therefore do not work on Linux. Number 4. The community. The community has kept most Linux users afloat. For those of you who run into the occasional problem while using Linux, there's an answer for virtually every single problem related to it on web forums like Stack Overflow. If you do not know what to do, the online community has got your back. If you don't want the hassle of fixing problems, as I said, there are distros that just work for what you want them to do. Number 5. The customizations. On Linux, you can customize literally everything. This may not be necessary for most people, but a lot of Linux users like doing it. It is a process known as ricing. You can change every part of your system, from your wallpaper, terminal, your desktop environment, your window manager, your fucking bootloader. I mean, it may sound ridiculous, but if you succeed at doing this, you can create a system that is so perfectly tailored to you that everything will just seem easy at that point, even the problems. Number 6. A cliche one, I know, but it can aid your problem-solving skills. If you do not mind the occasional issue or bug, the more you fix, the better you get at recognizing problems and their solutions. By a certain point, it will not take you very long to fix 90% of the problems that you will ever run into. You will begin to understand the inner workings of Linux systems to a point where problems can be followed relatively easily back to their source without much hassle. Number 1. The switching to Linux itself. Many computer users don't know that much about computers themselves. I'm not saying this is a bad thing, the truth is that they don't need to, because OSs like Windows and Mac cover it up for you without any interruption. Switching to a different OS can appear to be a Herculean task at a glance. Most Linux distros, however, have a GUI installation process where you point and click to install the system, which for most is the ideal version. But if you are not careful during this process, you could wipe, say, a drive with important files in it. It is not that difficult to install most Linux distros, it's just that regular human error can drastically affect your computer during this process. This goes for installing any OS, by the way, not just Linux distros. Number 2. The issues and bugs. For most people, this is not an issue, but for the average Joe, this could be a nightmare. I'm not saying there's many bugs in Linux. You'll always run into the occasional bug like any operating system, it's just that there's a little bit more on Linux. To fix most problems on Linux distros, you must use the terminal, which yes is not that difficult to use after some practice, but there is a huge learning curve that many, rightfully so, do not want to overcome. You might be saying, but Jimmy, this is a necessary part of Linux. And I know that, but I'm just stating that this is not viable for most people. This does not make Linux a bad choice by any means, it's just not really meant for the average person who just wants to use their computer. Kinda ties into the previous one, but number 3, you will probably have to use the terminal. Whether it be a couple times or many times, there will always be at least one time where you must use it. If you want to install an app that is not in a GUI list, terminal. If you want to fix an obscure problem, terminal. Number 4. For the consumer, Windows just does more. Yes, this is a hard pill to swallow, I get it. It was a hard pill to swallow myself. But everything surrounding the consumer computer industry is built to be Windows/Mac centric. These systems are so popular to the point where most companies developing products for computers just make them for these too. Adobe. Sorry, sore throat. There will always be a way to use products like those on Linux, but it's so much more convoluted compared to just double-clicking and opening the app. You have to tinker with your system, which can possibly break parts of it or the whole system, which, as I said before, the average Joe does not know how or want to do that. This ties into spyware, bloat, and the AI crap that Windows adds to their systems. Why do people stick with Windows with all of this shit being added, you ask? Well, it's because most of these shitty additions don't actually stop people from doing what they need to do. Sure, it is very annoying, and Copilot, the spyware, and bloat can cause issues, but most people either don't notice, care, or some people even install software to purge their system of these things. And at that point, why even use Linux if all of these problems on Windows can be dealt with? And I know this is not a good thing on microslop's end, but still. Number 5. You can do anything with your system. Initially, this sounds like the Customization Pro I mentioned earlier, and yes, it is actually tied in with it. When I say that you can do anything with your system, I mean you can. See this command on screen? This command deletes the current directory/folder you are in, which is useful for cleaning up your system if you want to. But if you say make a typo and remove the period in the command, it will become this, and it would be very catastrophic. This command deletes, well, your entire fucking system. Everything. Every single file on your computer in the drive that your OS is in. Gone. This is an extreme example. Very extreme and also very rare. But the safety railings that Windows and Mac put in to prevent you from doing something stupid do not exist on Linux. So, you have to have a bit of knowledge or be really careful when changing something big or significant on your system, like your desktop environment. Now, this may sound like Linux is the Wild West. However, there are still safeguards. For example, did you see that sudo in the command? This means super user do, and if that was not in your command, your OS would have stopped you from doing that. There are still file permission safety nets, but they aren't as restrictive or as plentiful as the Windows or Mac ones. Keeping the pros and cons in mind, should you switch? I can't go over every single type of computer user in this video, but what I can tell you is, if everything works for you and you do not want to switch because of the list of cons, don't. That is no problem. You do not have to switch despite what some parts of the Linux community is saying. You should use what is best for you. Now, if you do switch, what must you be able to do to use your new Linux OS effectively? Well, first you have to choose one tailored to you, as I said. But what now? Well, first of all, you will need to learn a bit of the terminal. Now, while I said you don't have to, you probably should, just in case. Terminal knowledge of any kind can become a lifesaver when it comes to any type of bug fixing. Second, updates can break things, but not always and not usually often. Updates in the Linux community are usually monitored by a large group of people called maintainers, which help upkeep the OS and apps/packages. These people are usually not part of a company, but fret not, the maintainers are very good at what they do. But sometimes there will be an occasional bug that will slip out from under their noses, and you must be mindful of that. Third, hardware. Make sure your hardware is Linux compatible, which basically all modern PCs and most old PCs have. Most hardware needs drivers, which are updated through the system. Very rarely you will need to update them yourself. This does not apply to most people. But, for example, if you have an NVIDIA graphics card, you will need to update your own drivers manually most of the time. This entire video, every line of it basically just sums up to this. If you're curious, yes, switch and go for it, but keep all of the cons and things you must do in mind when you are doing so. If you're happy with your OS and you don't want to, don't. Don't feel pressured by the community and the internet to switch despite the miasma of videos telling you to do so. Even though Windows and Mac are flawed, and I'm sure most of the users can agree with me on that here, that does not mean they are not good for your purposes. Thanks for watching, guys, but keep this in mind. Most of these points are somewhat based around my opinions from what I've seen throughout the internet about Linux and from my own experiences. They are as unbiased as I can make them, and if you have any points that you feel like are worth noting, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and again, thank you guys so much for watching.